Welcome to Good Life. I'm Dean Wilson. Great show for you today. Jill Roberts and Letty Santiago from Community Partners in Caring are with me. This organization does great work for seniors in our community who may be isolated, also people with disabilities. It's a powerful story. It's inspiring. Stay tuned. The team from Community Partners in Caring on The Good Life next. Welcome to Good Life. I'm Dean Wilson. So glad you joined us today. Just a reminder, you can always find us at goodlifetelevision.org. All the interviews are there. There's also power clips, some of the special moments that we've had, some great guests, and we have two more today. I'm really pleased to welcome two directors of community outreach for an organization called Community Partners in Caring here in the Santa Barbara, Santa Maria area. Jill Roberts and Letty Santiago with me.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having
Thanks
us.
for coming. Just getting to talk to you guys a little bit before we started here. It's wonderful to hear what you do, and I want to kind of get into that in a minute in terms of this organization. But maybe we could start a little bit with kind of your own stories. I was reading about both of you this morning, and I was really interested. It was interesting to read kind of where you came from and kind of what has brought you to the place where you want to do this kind of work. So maybe Jill, we can start with you, but kind of just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you came from, and kind of what got you to this position.
I've lived most of my life in the Los Angeles area, but I've recently moved to Santa Barbara County because my mother lives in Santa Maria, and I took this job with Community Partners in Caring because I feel a calling to be there giving assistance to people who are isolated, particularly seniors. And I have a disability that I've lived with all my life, and yet I've worked in the working world all my life. And I like to work, and I like to support others, and I like to come up with new ways of finding solutions to what sometimes are the problems that people encounter, and they just don't know how to get past them. And so this job that I'm doing as a community engagement specialist just really called to me. And when I first met with Vilma Contreras, who's the executive director, we really hit it off. But behind all that was my being someone who was brought up by young parents, very young, and I was born prematurely, which is why I have a slight developmental disability. It's called cerebral palsy, and I just walk kind of differently than you might expect seeing someone walking down the street. But with support from other agencies like the Shriners and a lot of support from my parents, honestly, always encouraging me to just get up and keep going, and classmates, teachers, college programs have all been there as a support system for me, and so I've always felt that need to also be someone who gives their time and talent. I was thinking about it the other day. At first I was going to say, I think I first started helping seniors about 45 years ago, but I also realized that if you go even further back, when I was about 3, the first time I was ever freely giving my time and talent when I was in preschool, and my mom got us to do a puppet show for my preschool class.
Oh, really?
And so I've always been a little bit of a performer and kind of out there, and so it's been a long time that I've just wanted to be out there, both engaging and entertaining.
I love it. Well, I admire you a lot.
Thank you.
We have our second daughter would be cerebral palsy diagnosed. She actually had a massive stroke in the womb. So it's a brain injury, but she would be diagnosed as cerebral palsy. And so we've been in that world for 18 years. And to see people like you who have that diagnosis, that injury, overcome and work, you've had a great family.
Yes.
It's really spectacular. So kudos to you and everything you've done. It's wonderful. Letty, tell us about yourself.
Okay, well, I'm not from the LA area. I was born and raised in the Lompoc area, North County. I basically have been doing work with the medical field my whole life until I started working with Community Partners in Caring. my story's a little bit different. I started working with Community Partners in Caring because seniors helped me at some point. I went through something in my life where I ended up in the hospital for about a year and a half.
Really?
And although my family members did come to visit me, it was hard. I was in UCLA. It was hard for them to drive to UCLA. And the only people that would visit me were seniors, the volunteer seniors in the hospital. They would bring me communion. They would bring me magazines. They would keep me company.
Wow.
And that just, after I went through all that, this ad about this job came up, and it was me. There was no doubt about it that I needed to do this. I needed to give back to my senior community. And that's where I'm at right now.
That's powerful. Let's talk about Community Partners in Caring. I want to preface this by saying that the organization that sponsors this program is called the Turner Foundation, which has a long history, 45 years actually, of working with seniors, and specifically low-income seniors who tended to be isolated. And the Turner Foundation had a model to bring services, permanent supportive services programs to apartment communities where they lived to be able to enrich their lives and do all that sort of thing, which is a wonderful story in itself. What you guys do, best I can tell, is you're going to them. So you're going to the seniors who might be isolated, mobility limited, maybe no family,
Right.
and you're finding them and then bringing them support that they need. Is that accurate?
And it's not just an intervention. It's not just an emergency. Oh,
Right,
you have this
one-time
one
thing.
need. Yeah. I mean, at least for those that really need that. Sometimes it's, especially with the pandemic. Maybe it is just I'm not sure how I'm going to get to the grocery store this 1 week.
Yeah.
But if we see that there's more that can be done, if more social services could happen for this person, and it's just the lack of someone being there to support them, to help fill out the paperwork, that's what we're moving toward, is to be that all-inclusive support system that's there for them.
And it's ongoing.
Yes. And we haven't stopped during the pandemic. Everything.
I'm sure the need's greater in the pandemic.
It
People not
definitely
being able
is.
to go out.
You know the numbers, right?
Yeah.
It was. We had less than 400 seniors enrolled before the pandemic, and now we're probably reaching 900.
We've doubled
Is that
since the
right?
pandemic.
Just this year.
Just this
Yes.
year.
Wow. So you have a need for volunteers.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
And that's what we do.
And you rally the volunteers.
Yes.
And that's why we're on TV right now. We're talking to those people.
Yes.
So the three outcomes that I've noticed this in some of the material is among the seniors you serve, you expect to find greater confidence as they age in place, reduced isolation, and improved access to basic needs such as medical care, preventive care, food, and the need for human connection, which I think is so powerful. So for somebody who's watching this as an introduction to Community Partners in Caring, those are the three outcomes you're trying to get.
Yeah.
So what's the path for somebody who's watching this who says, I'd like to volunteer, I'd like to bring seniors groceries, I'd like to bring seniors, transport seniors. How do they do it?
The positive thing that happened from having to pivot during the pandemic is that we had already brought on a staff or two that were, they transformed the website. I give kudos to Kaylee Wise, our program coordinator, and so the website was renewed. You can go to our website, which is partnersincaring.org, and there's information about us. There's an application that you can fill out online. All the forms it used to be we would just have people, we'd give them an application, they'd bring it back, we'd get other documents and a background check done. That was all in person. We're not doing that at the moment, but everything has been transformed into electronic forms, so we can email it to you, you email it back.
That's wonderful.
So that's one of those benefits that actually comes from all this hardship we've been through, is that we're just ramped up that much more
Right.
to do it quickly and efficiently and technologically. Yeah.
I loved your answer, Letty, when you were asked why you work for Community Partners in Caring, and it was pretty simple. because I will be a senior someday, and I would want someone to help me. You experienced that in the hospital.
Yes, sir.
You had people helping you. And what a simple but like profound thought.
It is.
We're all going to be seniors.
Yes,
And how do we want to be treated?
exactly.
I mean, that's really that's the driving motivation for you, isn't it?
Right. It's hard for any young person to understand what a senior goes through unless they actually go through what a senior goes through. I experienced that isolation, and I just think about all these seniors at home that have nobody.
Yeah.
All they need is one 30-minute phone call, and that's all we need volunteers to do. An easy phone call for a senior that has no one to talk to all day but the TV. An easy grocery shopping that they can do, pick up some groceries and drop them off because they are not able to go to the store.
Right.
It's easy. We ask the seniors to volunteer an hour or two a month.
Yeah.
It's not that hard. The process is easy. We're keeping our volunteers and clients safe. Even for our transportation. Before the pandemic, we had a lot of services that we provided. Because of the pandemic, we had to transition and think, what are the seniors needing right now? Yeah, they do need transportation, but a lot of the doctors were doing the online appointments, so our seniors needed groceries, and that's where we came in. And that's what we need right now. Volunteers that can just go grocery shopping for our seniors. Easy task, easy.
And young people, and I'm thinking about college students, what a great opportunity to do something meaningful.
Right.
I just think that, I always think in terms of, when I think about service, it's so much more than about what happens for the person being served. I mean, there's something so powerful that happens for that person who's serving. So for a young person, I'm thinking about as a parent, what do I want for my kids? Well, I want them to have hearts that are tender. I want them to care about other people. I want them to see people who are hurting or alone. And what an opportunity for young people, college students who are in good health, maybe have a car, are mobile, and they can go and make a real impact in seniors' lives, can't they? I mean, that's a win-win.
That's a good lesson that parents can be teaching their kids right now, because we've all experienced what the isolation feels like. We didn't have that experience before. We were blessed and capable of going wherever we wanted, whenever we wanted, and now we've had 8-9 months of not being able to. So when you think of that pullback and saying, well, we can't go visit Grandma, but you can certainly call Grandma. You can write her a letter. You can do something, because you know what it feels like to suddenly be not able to be in contact with your friends.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
We're all kind of like experts in isolation.
We are now.
Yeah. We know what it feels like,
Yeah.
which is that's a very good point. Last thing I wanted to ask about seniors in general. I mean, I sometimes I feel like, and the Turner Foundation, I think I kind of grew up around the Turner Foundation and the seniors that we worked with, and I think I discovered this when I was young, but it's become even more true for me, which is these seniors are oftentimes like gold mines of life experience, wisdom,
I know Letty
truth.
told me that was her experience
Yeah,
when she was in the
definitely.
hospital. That's
Yeah,
when
tell
she
me about that.
realized.
I mean, I heard stories from years back. I mean, I learned new things from seniors, things I'm using now, even just like some of them were tutors. I'm learning that stuff to work with my daughter. I mean, a lot of knowledge, a lot of wisdom. I learned a lot.
Yes.
And I still have contact with these people at this time. So it's a wonderful experience. And
Yeah. Honoring our elders. It's such a good thing for our community, and what we can glean. I was
And
interviewed.
that is part of our message. Our mission is to really allow seniors to live independently, but with the understanding that it has to be with dignity and respect.
Yes.
And all the best things, not just how a senior may think this is what I want, because sometimes that's not enough. Sometimes when you get isolated, you forget how to take care. That was my experience with my dad. Unfortunately, he passed away last year. And I did everything I could in the year prior to his passing to try to find ways to have him not be as isolated. He kind of put himself in a good setup, a way to live and know that his expenses were all taken care of, but it was still very isolated, and that I know was the big push after he passed. I just felt like I could have done more. I felt like there needed to be more in the world so that the people who are caregiving right now realize that, yes, we know how hard it is to do that caregiving, but with support, with other people and with other organizations and as partners together, we can do so much more to make the time that a senior has made for themselves, better.
Enrich their life.
Independent isn't being alone. Independent is being able to achieve things, and when you get old, that means with support.
Yes.
You don't have to do it all alone.
Yes. And isolation's never good.
No.
I can't think of very many situations where extended periods of isolation is a good thing for somebody. We're not meant to live that way. I mean, I just don't believe that. So you've got 900 people signed up. So if an organization, group of people, family wanted to do something for one of those 900 or 10 or 50 or whatever it would be, bake cookies, call them, send a card.
We're definitely.
Could they do that?
Yeah, we're definitely pushing, but within the next 2 weeks, we want to try to gather cards. We do want to try to get, around Christmas time, get things out to seniors that, maybe haven't received. We don't know, if they've received things, and so we want to make sure that they know the community cares about them.
Yes.
We're going to institute something called Phone Pals. We already do what we call reassurance calls, which is just to make sure those that are signed up with us know and remember about our services and that they can always call. The call center number is 805-925-8000. That's where Letty is. That's where Jennifer and Michael, Leah.
Staff, the call
we
center.
We have a staff there, and they're usually there 9 to 5, and I think you can even leave a message if it's after that time.
And so somebody can contact you guys, and you could help connect them to seniors, to who they may want to bless. Is that's possible?
Right. Yes.
That's really good to know.
And for our expansion in Santa Barbara, we really need more funding support. So if there's anyone out there who feels moved to give, Giving Back Tuesday is coming up following Thanksgiving, and you may see us on social media, saying a few things about that. Yeah. And I'd really like to thank the Organic Soup Kitchen, the Food Bank of Santa Barbara, and even the Mesa branch, the new branch of Montecito Trust and Montecito Bank and Trust. Yeah. They're going to let me put a donation box in their lobby, just so we have some extra things to be able to supply seniors as we move into December.
Yeah, this is really important around the holidays. And I know the last thing I wanted to mention is there is a program that a few years ago, and I think it was mostly up in the Santa Maria area, the Break the Barrier. So Break the Barrier was a program where students got involved with you all. Is that right?
Right.
Yes.
And which was a transformative thing probably for the young people just as much as it was for the seniors, but it was centered around doing landscaping and kind of changing the environment for a situation that was in need. And the second part of it was technology training.
Teaching a little, how to use your phone.
Yeah.
So we
Great. I need that.
Yeah, we were using high school students to do all this. The high school students would sign up as volunteers and go out to the seniors' home. This was awesome. I was actually witness to the yard work and the IT programs. Our seniors loved it to see all these young people in their yard doing that, as well as with the IT. We were able to teach them how to Skype back a year ago of Skype to them, Zoom. All this new stuff that they didn't know about. And the high school students loved it. They enjoyed doing it with us.
So high school students, college students, any students.
Any students.
You guys want to bring this Break the Barrier program with young people to the Santa Barbara area as well. So that's something
I hope
where
after the pandemic restrictions,
pandemic.
That we can build that as well.
That's wonderful. Well, this is amazing, you guys. Great work. Thank you for what you do. partnersincaring.org.
Yes.
Let me see if I remember that phone number you just gave. 805-828.
925.
925-8000.
There you go.
925-8000. It's wonderful, and I really hope people see this and get involved, because what you're doing with seniors is so wonderful. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Dean.
We'll see you next time. Hi, Facebook friends. Do you like your friends? Do you love them? If you do, share this post with them, because if they start following Good Life TV's Facebook page, they're going to love it. They're going to be inspired and encouraged in this world of doom and gloom. Good Life TV is a ray of sunshine. You can share it with your friends. You can follow our page. We love you already. We don't even know you. You're going to love us. So share, like, follow, whatever else you can do, comment. Follow us at Good Life TV, and we'll see you real soon. Welcome to Good Life. I'm Dean Wilson. So glad you're with us. You can always find us at goodlifetelevision.org. So many of you have joined us there from all over the world, and we're grateful. The purpose here is to inspire, to honor, to encourage, to educate, and to empower. And we've had so many wonderful guests that have done those things. We've been inspired by stories of people you've never heard of, some people you have heard of, some of them in between, young and old, all walks of life, all professions. So it's been a really wonderful journey we've been on. So thank you for being here with us. I'm really excited about my guest today. He's a dear friend, in addition to being a corporate executive, and you're going to hear the rest of the story in a moment. John Mullen is with me. John, welcome.
Great to be here.
John is Bachelor of Science from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo in Civil Engineering, and a Master's in Global Leadership from Fuller Seminary. That's kind of an interesting combination. That really summarizes you in some ways. that combination, Civil Engineering and Global Leadership from Fuller Seminary.
Well, I wasn't a great civil engineer, so I moved on to the spiritual side to try that.
Good. John's companies over the years have grossed over $500 million in sales, and so John was really successful in business. But that's actually not even the most interesting part of the story. But let's start with your life, though. Let's start with kind of your growing up, what it was like for you coming up, and your family of origin. Start there.
Sure. So we moved down here to Santa Barbara when I was 7 years old, and my dad was an entrepreneur. He died at 92 years old, and he was still entrepreneuring at 92. And so he was an incredible inspiration in my life. And when I was growing up in Santa Barbara, because we're a beach community, all of my friends would surf, right, when I was a teen. Well, my dad had me working at his factory. So my dad manufactured furniture, so I would spend 8 hours a day, I think making $2 an hour during my summer working for my dad.
Wow.
But during that time, I was able to just watch him. He was incredibly gifted. He was an industrial designer. And so I just sat back and saw this incredible model in my life of someone who cared deeply about what he was doing. And so as I was growing up and getting older, I began to kind of look at, what do I want to do with my life? And I knew that I didn't want to follow exactly in his footsteps, but I knew I wanted to go to college. And it's really interesting because when I tell my kids this story, when I was in 6th grade at Monroe School in Santa Barbara, I ran for president. And I still remember who I ran against. I still remember all that happened. I didn't win. I lost. And I told my kids, I said, I lost as president, so later on I built my own companies and named myself president. So it all worked out.
Right, one way or the other.
Yeah.
And didn't your dad, weren't you like 33 or something, and your dad came to you and said, Johnny, it's your time?
Yeah, I graduated from Cal Poly University in civil engineering, came to Santa Barbara and worked as a civil engineer, and then began with a land development company because my desire was ultimately to become a real estate developer. And around when I was 32 years old, working for this land development company owned by a family, they decided to wind down the operations. And I still remember, like at that time, just, what am I going to do? And I called my dad. And at that point, my dad was in Chicago. And we're on the phone, and he just said, "Johnny, it's your time." And I said, "Well, what do you mean, Dad?" He said, "Look, you've got this entrepreneurial blood. It's time for you to start your own company." So literally, as I was winding down from that company, I still remember I was in their offices, and this was a point where there were now computers and printers, and I'm printing out my resume, I'm printing out all these proposals while I'm winding down in this one company. I'm starting up a new business. And so that was the beginning of JM Consulting Group, which I always said, well, it was only me, but it will ultimately grow. And it did. It grew into about 250 employees.
That's incredible. And so you had the JM Consulting, and then you had the development side, where you've done a ton of residential, 500 homes, or 700 residential homes in Southern California.
Yeah, so in the 90s, while I was doing real estate consulting, the wireless, the FCC began to issue licenses for wireless phones. And so if you remember, in the early 90s, we started getting these cell phones. We moved into that industry, so I became a wireless telecom consultant, and that grew our business in the 90s. And then in the mid-90s, my dream was to do real estate development, and so I formed JM Development. So we had two companies, and then in the 2000s, we were building about 100 homes a year in the Central Coast.
Yeah, the wireless phone thing kind of stuck.
Yeah.
Turns out.
Yeah, it sure did.
Let's fast forward to 2002, and talk about your journey with some of this, I don't know if I want to call it mission work, but some of this overseas work that you've done, specifically around the country of Mozambique, which I didn't know a lot about. I did read a little bit about the cyclones and the poverty and the landmines, and that 11% of girls go beyond elementary school. And it was interesting to read about this, but you ended up in Mozambique in 2002. Start there and kind of tell us what that was about,
Sure.
And then we can kind of go from there.
Yeah, so, at that time, I was in my late 40s. I had been very successful in business, and I literally was close to retirement if I would choose to retire. And so, and I had been involved in, some mission work, like we all do, go on a 3-day trip, but I'd never really gone to a third world country. And I was invited to go to Mozambique. I didn't know a lot about Mozambique. Literally, I had to look at it on a map to find out where it was, and found out it was one of the poorest countries in the world. I agreed to go on this missions trip with my friend Douglas Bowman, and I remember, this kind of evolving revelation of Mozambique. Initially, it's like, this will be a great trip. This will be fun. I'll tag this on to what I've already done, my successful career. And I remember, as I found out more and more, I found out, well, this is a country that's gone through civil war. It's a country that's had massive flooding, and a country where there was 1 million landmines that were laid in the ground. So I started getting this fear about going down to Mozambique.
Right.
At that point, I can't back out. And so I remember Douglas and I flew to Atlanta, and we're about to get on the plane in Atlanta. We were going with a missions organization. And I'm at the counter, to pick up my seats, and this woman goes, Mr. Mullen, I know that you had tickets in row 15A, and I had flown enough, a 747-400 to know that that's in business class, and I thought, this is a great missions organization. She goes, Mr. Mullen, I'm sorry, we've made a big mistake. You're not in 15A. You're in the middle of row 73. Now, I remember walking down that aisle all the way to the back of the plane, clutching my overnight bag like it was a life preserver. And I literally am going, where am I going? And I ended up in the back of the plane in the middle seat. And I finally get myself into that middle seat, and I've got a guy to the right of me and a guy to the left of me, and they're both going on this missions trip. And I turn to the guy at the right, and I'm looking at him. He's missing a finger on one of his hands. And I turn to him and I said, hey, I know we're going to the same place. My doctor told me if I take the malaria medication, I'll just be fine, you know, I'll be safe. And he looks back at me and goes, you know, I was a missionary for 6 years in East Africa. I took the medication. I still got malaria. So now I'm convinced I'm going to die. I'm going to die in this third world country that I know nothing about. I turn to my left and there's this big oversized guy that's spilling over into my seat. And I remember when the plane was ready to go, there was a seat available. I could see that was a window seat. And I thought, gosh, I want that seat. And so I turn to him and I say, hey, I can give you a little bit more room, and you know, I'm going to go get that seat. And he turns to me and he puts his arm around and he goes, no way, I want to get to know you. And so I'm going,
Really?
I'm stuck 17 hours between these two. I'm sandwiched between these two guys. And so, you know, we flew down to Cape Town, and then from Cape Town to Johannesburg, and then we flew into Mozambique. And I remember, you know, I just thought, I'm going to my death. I mean, like, I'm not going to survive in this country. And so we get there, we arrive in Maputo, Mozambique, which is the capital. And we're going to a place in Sempeto where this conference center is, but where they have a children's center. And I remember arriving there, and they took us out to see this dump site in the middle of the city. And you got to realize, like in Mozambique, I mean, this is a country where the average person lives on about $1.50 a day. So it's an extremely poor country. And they take us out to this dump site, and at this dump site, people, I mean, it's not a dump site like we're used to. This is a dump site where people live in the dump. They literally live there. And so they live in cardboard houses. The trash trucks come in. They're climbing, you know, all over the trash trucks trying to get food. And this is how these people live. And I remember there was a phrase that they would use, that this ministry would use, and it was stop for the one. And what they said was, look, we're going to stop for that one person that's in front of us, the one person that's broken, the one person that's an amputee. That's the person we're going to focus on. And it just really, really stuck with me. So we were there for 10 days just watching this ministry. And it was changing my heart. I mean, I literally was realizing, like, I've never experienced this before in my life. And it was just amazing. We get to the last night, and we had been at a village the day before, and I had eaten some food, and I was very sick. This is the night before we're going to leave and come back home. And they line up everybody on this concrete wall because the head of this ministry, Heidi Baker, was going to come and pray for everyone. And I thought, yeah, I need prayer, and I'd like her to pray for me. So I'm waiting, and she never gets to me. But 3 13-year-old Mozambican boys, they come and they lay a prayer cloth on me. And they lay hands on me, and as they begin to pray over me, I just start weeping, and I can't stop weeping. And I realize, like, God has brought me halfway around the world. And I've been a Christian for 20 years, but he brought me halfway around the world that I might meet Jesus. And I met Jesus right there because I realized, as wealthy as I was coming from the United States, I was poor. And he was calling me to be a person who was poor in spirit. So that was my first encounter with Mozambique.
Wow. That's amazing. Let's go to 2015, and then I want to get back to that in terms of what happened to you. But so 2015, you end up reconnecting with Douglas Bowman. You're taking a walk on the beach in Santa Barbara, and kind of take us from there in terms of what happened and how we get to this story, which, by the way, I will mention now, John, they've written a great book that I was reading last night called Florencia. We're going to talk about Florencia in a second, but I commend it to you. It's a really great book. But take us 2015 and how we got to Florencia.
Douglas and I were on the trip in 2002 in Mozambique, and then we both come back, and our lives kind of, move away from one another. He goes to New Zealand as a pastor. I continue in business in the early 2000s, kind of go back to what I was doing, and he went back to what he was doing beforehand. And in 2015, we reconnect. He comes back to Santa Barbara, and I haven't seen him for quite some time. And we begin to just take these walks. And as we're walking, we are reminiscing about what happened in Mozambique and realizing like this was a pivotal moment in both of our lives. So we think, well, let's write a book. Let's write a book about our experience in Mozambique. And really from sort of a Westerner perspective, it was really, let's write a selfie book. Let's write a book about ourselves, because we think all these people are going to be interested in who we are. And
My
so,
road to humility.
well, yeah, I know, my road,
My 5 secrets to success.
yeah,
and being
exactly.
humble.
And so we began to write this book. We wrote 13 chapters of this book. And we're starting, we're in chapter 13, we're starting to really look into Mozambique and look into these floods and look into the depth of the poverty. And one of the things we come upon is that these landmines were in Mozambique. And so these are landmines that had been put in the ground because there was a civil war that was going on. So they're putting them in the ground regarding the opposing army, right? But they're left there, and they're left there for years. And so now, and a landmine's not discriminating. It doesn't know who's above the ground. And so now they're sitting in the waterways, they're sitting in the pathways, and civilians are stepping on these landmines. And it's just devastating what's going on in this country. So as we're doing our research, we find this article in National Geographic. It's an article on the demining efforts in Mozambique that are taking place. And in those demining efforts, they're talking about women going into demining, helping to demine the country, and going from $1.50 a day to $10 a day. And we thought, gosh, this is great. Well, the last paragraph of that article, as if it's an afterthought, they tell us about this 17-year-old girl, Florencia. They show us a picture of her, and they tell us her story. And in her story, we learn that she was out collecting firewood. She lived in a village, Macachula, in Mozambique. She's out collecting firewood, and it's just a regular day, and she's reaching to get a piece of firewood, and she steps on a landmine, and it blows off her leg. And it's just there's this massive gnarled flesh. She's lying there, and all her mother sees from her hut is this smoke rising, off in the distance. And they run, and they find Florencia. She's lying on the ground, and she's half dead. And this paragraph is telling us about her story as a kind of an afterthought, And Douglas and I read that, and we thought, how can we write a selfie book and not tell her story? How can we not find her? Like, we need to locate this woman. We need to bring her help, And so that began this journey in finding Florencia.
And it's amazing she survived. Didn't they have to drive 4 hours to the hospital?
They had to take her 4 hours, because in Macachula, like even when we went back down there, you're driving off the road into the sand, going to the bush country, and you realize, it's not like America. They're not heading over to CVS to pick up their medication. They're not heading over to Cottage Hospital to receive care. They have to be taken, somewhere 2 to 4 hours away. And again, she's dying in the back of a pickup truck while this is all taking place.
When she stepped on the landmine, her leg was blown off. She had cashews in her pocket. The cashews fell on the ground, and we'll get back to that at the end.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind. Cashews falling on the ground. Now, you read the article, let's do something, let's find her. You rally a group of students from the local high school who want to help want to go on the trip and take us from there?
Yeah, so what really happens is we take the article and we look at it and we go, first of all, who wrote the article? Well, we find out that the woman who wrote the article was Claudia Sangel. She was an adjunct professor at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. And we're like, we can't believe this for National Geographic. So we contact her, we write her an email, and she writes back. And all we say is, hey, we're two guys here in Santa Barbara. We learned about Florencia. You did an article on her, which means you went down there. We'd like to help her. We'd like to help her in some way, in some manner. And she writes back and she says, hey, if you want to help her, here's the contact in Mozambique. His name's Adorito Ismael. Now, he was with Handicap International, and he was a D minor, but he was the one who originally brought Claudia up to Macachula to interview Florencia. So we contact Adorito Ismael. Now, this is a guy that is busy. He's got a lot going on. We don't hear anything back. It's 2 weeks later. And finally, he's looking at his emails and he sees our email. And he realizes, oh my gosh, there's these two guys that are in California and they want to help Florencia. So he spends 2.5 days out of his schedule and goes up into her village to find her. When he finds her, he takes a letter from us to say, introduce who we are and to say, we'd like to help her get a prosthetic leg. So he's with her and he's talking with her and he says, these guys would like to help you get a prosthetic leg. And her response to that was, what's a prosthetic leg? She had no idea, because in Mozambique, those who are amputees often crawl on the ground, or they have makeshift crutches, but they don't have the technology. They don't know about a prosthetic leg. So anyway, but he said, look at Florencia, there's two guys in California that want to help you walk. Do you want to walk again? And she nodded. She had her little son, Gildo, who she couldn't carry. And she really, her life had been completely just cut off and limited because she was an amputee. So we found Florencia through Adorito. And then from that point, we began to look at, okay, how do we promised something here, how do we deliver on our promise? Well, the tough news was that it would cost $12,000 to $15,000 to get a prosthetic leg in Mozambique. And we just thought, well, we don't even know where to begin. We don't know what to do. So the second thing we did is we got back on Google. We began to look at free prosthetic legs. Like, is there anyone in this world who is giving out free prosthetic legs? We'll get one, we'll get her there, and we'll get her a leg. We found this clinic in India, Jaipur Foot Clinic, and as we began to learn about it, we were just amazed. The guy who runs it is Dr. Mehta, and I was telling you earlier, he's like a modern day Gandhi. This is a non-profit organization. So if you live in India and you are an amputee, and there's lots of amputees in India just because of the traffic accidents and other things. If you're an amputee in India, you can get on the train anywhere in India, and you can bring your family, and you can arrive in Jaipur and come to the Jaipur Foot Clinic. You don't need an appointment. You just walk up, and you will be taken care of. They will put your family up, and for after 2 to 3 days, you will walk out of that clinic with a prosthetic leg for free. We were just amazed. So we wrote Dr. Mehta, and we got an immediate response. And here's what he said. He said, I love your story. This is an incredible story that you two would go halfway around the world to rescue this woman. He said, bring her to Jaipur. We will put a leg on her. She will walk out of this place.
So amazing.
So we just to end that part of it, we began to go to the local high school, and we knew Dan Williams, who headed the Matt Academy at Santa Barbara High School, and we said, hey, as we go on this trip, we really would like to bring some students with us that may be interested in film, that may be interested in, just letting the world know what this journey is about, and we'd love them to come with us. So we had 5 students that signed up with us, and 2 of them were young filmmakers out of Santa Barbara High School. And so they began this process with the idea that they were going to actually film a documentary. So they were on the trip. The second part of that, I'm an alumni of Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and I contacted Cal Poly to say, hey, do you have any engineers in your program up here that would like to be part of this journey? So we began to work with the senior engineers at Cal Poly, and Cal Poly became very interested in this project. In fact, the president of Cal Poly loved what was going on, and we had 5 of those senior engineers come on this trip as well. So now we have 5 students that are high school students, 5 engineering students, and they're all coming with us on this journey. Now, we got to go down to Mozambique and pick her up, and then we've got to bring her up to Jaipur, in order for her to receive a leg.
Unbelievable. And that had to have been a transformational trip for those students as well. But long story short, she gets the leg. And I watched a video of her walking back into her village and seeing the reactions of the people in her village is just powerful. And there was a cashew tree. Those cashews that were in her pocket went into the ground, and actually a tree emerged and I was just thinking about, there's so much depth to that one part of that book, just that out of brokenness, it's like the seed going into the ground. Yeah. A seed can sit on this table for 75 years and nothing happens. And it goes in the ground and magic happens. There's something about dying, there's something about that. I thought about that story about the cashews going into the ground, and then now we have this fruit. I mean, it's amazing what happened to you. And that's one of the things that I think is I mean, it was inspiring to me that here's a guy who has made it up the ladder, made the money, had success, family, the kids, the house, everything, beautiful city, everything is kind of in order, and yet, maybe the seed was still on the ground, on the table, and then, but then through this experience, there's a brokenness that happened, is the way you described it to me. But talk a little bit more kind of about what happened in your heart. I mean, and what's it been like since? Because clearly you haven't forgotten this. Clearly this is still, the 2002 experience, and then of course what's happened since. But clearly that 2002, that breaking, that encounter you had with Jesus, it has not faded away. No. And you can't forget it. But talk about it a little bit.
Well, let me begin with the cashew, and that is that at that moment in time when she went to collect the firewood, she had these cashews. Now, if you look just on Google and you look up cashew trees in Mozambique, there's cashew trees all over the country. I mean, and they sell them, and as you're driving on the roads, they have them hanging from bags. But she had a couple cashews in her pocket, and it drops out. It goes into the ground. And so when we all went back there in 2015, and we had all the students surrounding, and we came around the area where she had lost her leg, where the landmine had blown up her leg, there's a beautiful cashew tree. And we end our book talking about that, because it really is the story, not just of Florencia, but it's our story. It's my story, and I think it's a lot of people's story, and that is, something has to die in us in order for there to be life. And I know that it was interesting when I came back from Mozambique, because at some level I was a changed person, but my cashew needed to die more in the ground over the coming years. So I became one of the largest boutique builders here in Santa Barbara, and we got to 2008. And I remember it well, like in the downturn in the economy and that recession that we went through, it was as if I now was going to descend to a deep, dark place. I was a very wealthy person. I lived in Hope Ranch, which is a beautiful community here in Santa Barbara. And it came, what happened to me was I had to come to a place where I was working deals out with the banks. I was basically coming from my high place, and God had a plan for me. And I think when I think of the kingdom of God as a CEO of some companies, I think, we often live in this world, or this narrative where we're in a top-down, a CEO, and then we have all these employees, and we have the people who serve us. Well, the kingdom of God is an inverted pyramid. It's a kingdom where Jesus says, no, it isn't about being on top. It's about who can rush to the bottom the fastest. And yet we don't realize that in this American culture. And so I literally was forced into that place where I'm selling things, I'm selling assets. I had, rentals. All of this was sold in 2008, 2009, 2010.
Can I say something?
Yes.
Right
Yeah.
Because I was talking to somebody who knows you. I've never told you this, and he was describing that period. He said, John Mullen is an honorable man. He walked into those banks and did the right thing. He was just talking about how you handled. The 2008 was a bloodbath for everybody. In terms of this industry. But he said he just mentioned that to me one time. He's like, he did the honorable. He did the right thing. He did not leave, just cut and run. He was, which I thought. Anyway, I just wanted to tell you that.
Well, I appreciate that. But going through it at the time, it was very, very difficult because we're raising our kids. We're living here in Santa Barbara, and Santa Barbara, like a lot of wealthy communities, is an uppity community. It's like, what car are you driving? What like the clothes on your back. Do you shop at Nordstrom's? All of this, right? And it's like I'm in this free fall. And it's like, well, who am I going to become? And I think during that time, I believe one of the questions that I was asking God is, God, who do you want to be for me right now? Like, who do you want to be for me? And I felt like he said, I want to be that. I want to be your Savior like I was in Mozambique in 2002. Wow. I want you to walk with me in the brokenness of your life. And as I began to walk in that brokenness, I realized I'm a wealthy man. Yeah. Like, I'm the wealthiest guy on the planet. I'm wealthy. I'm just wealthy in the things that God has given me in His kingdom and the resources in my life with my family, but just knowing Jesus at a deep level. And I feel like, so many of my friends that have been wealthy, and nothing against wealth, they have not descended through those dark places of being the cashew that goes into the ground. Right. And I think God wants to take us there because He wants us to meet Jesus.
Yes. Yeah, it can be so hard when you have money and power. The Scripture says it, but the reason is because you're insulated, protected. You have insurance on your insurance, and so to become a broken person is a really tricky thing. Unless barring something like what happened to you. And I will say that John has done some amazing things in the community, and one of them is called Believer's Edge, where for 11 years he taught 400 lessons on life and leadership to men, transforming lots of men in the community. So I wanted to mention that as well. That's been a wonderful fruit of all this. But last thing, we only have a couple minutes, but identity. I always think about identity. And I think what we've just described sounds a little bit like, I always talk about the fake ID. The fake IDs we all carry around. Right. The fake ID that says that I'm the businessman. I think you can even idolize your family. Or have your ID being in, I'm the dad of these perfect children, which we're all broken up pretty quickly. Sure. But the fake IDs, it's kind of like, trading those in for the real one, the son, the beloved. Talk a little bit about that and kind of what happened for you.
Well, I would say when I look at the scriptures, I mean, I probably don't have a favorite scripture, but I have a favorite theme, and it's being the beloved son, and I think how for in the New Testament, how to the Jew, they're watching this person Jesus, right, and he starts talking to his father and using the word Abba. Like daddy. Now this is a radical term, because they felt so distant from their Father in heaven. And I think of that one scene where John the Baptist is baptizing Jesus, right? And Jesus comes out of the water, and the heavens open, and the Father says, "This is my beloved Son in whom I'm well pleased." And what I love about that image is that Jesus hadn't accomplished anything. He didn't have any degrees, didn't have a successful business, didn't have 250 employees. He was just a son. And the Father said, I am pleased in you. And I think of that story and think that I have received that from my Father in heaven, that like my identity is not in my business. It's not in the things that I do. It's who I am. So my Father has said, look you're my beloved son. I'm pleased in you. So I came to a place in my life where I realized he can't love me any more than he loves me right now. Like I'm a beloved son, and we all are. We're beloved sons and daughters of our Father in heaven. And when I think of my life that way, I think, I, of all men, am wealthy beyond anything I could ever imagine. So there's nothing in this world that can reach that level of my Father saying, "You're my beloved son in whom I'm well pleased."
John has a TED Talk. Can people access that?
Yes.
How do they find it?
It's a TEDx talk
okay.
at Oaks Christian.
Right. It's a TEDx talk at Oaks Christian where John tells this story of Florencia, and then she comes on stage, and I'm getting chills just talking about it. It's magical. So watch it. We'll put the link up. And again, before we go, I wanted to mention. So Florencia, this is the book is called Florencia: An Accidental Story. Douglas Bowman and John D. Mullen. I think you'll love it. We're going to have some of these at the Turner Foundation as well. So if you need to get a hold of us, we'd love to get you a copy. But it's Florencia, and it's a beautiful, beautiful book. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
It's
been a pleasure.
What a wonderful story. What a wonderful journey you've been on.
And if I could just thank you for the Turner Foundation, because
you.
Some years ago I met you.
Ago.
Yeah, and brought my children down
to
the village apartments, and
That's
just
right.
was able to minister alongside you. It's just been
That's
amazing to see what your foundation has done in this city.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I remember that. Somebody asked me the other day, "How did you meet John Mullen?" I said, "I think he just walked in the door."
Yeah, I do.
Maybe God sent him. I don't know, but he was like he just walked in, and I remember learning from you so much, and it was powerful for me then and now. So thank you for the impact you've had in my life. You've really impacted my life a lot.
Great,
So,
thank you.
thank you. We're having this moment on
We
TV.
are.
All right. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time.